What is happening? We're in the early weeks here of 2021. I love that everyone's like, oh, put 2020 behind us, as if like suddenly by going into January 1st, everything's gonna change. It doesn't. All this is depressing. This is so depressed. This opening. Oh, I gotta rethink this. I was gonna say coronavirus is still here. It's 2020. Okay, let me take this from the top. What is going on, guys? That footage you saw at the beginning there, that was just me messing around with some new lights. It's a new year, so I have a new lighting setup here, which probably looks the exact same as per normal, but I've actually swapped out a whole lot. I got a fill light right now, which is actually one of these little Nan lights. And I was just messing around with it. It's incredibly bright. This is only at like 10% right now. But out there, you can see this footage. We were messing around with all the settings. It's RGB, so we can do all the different light settings, and it can look like a police siren and all that. But I love that all the companies now are including magnets in these lights, because it makes it really easy to put it places that normally you would have to grip it or tape it up. It just makes filmmaking easier. So I'm using this as my fill light. And also too, we swapped out our key light. It's now the Aperture 300 D2. It's very big, covers a lot of space. I'm really enjoying it so far. The bigger the light, the softer the light, and this is a very powerful light. When I turned it on, it like lit up the entire office and the entire neighborhood. I have it at like 7% right now or something. But let's get into some documentary work. I want to give you guys some great tips. I'm just landed this really big documentary that I can't say everything right now because it's for a global broadcaster, and I had to sign an NDA just an hour ago saying that I wouldn't talk about it, but I'm going to talk with the producers and see if I can bring you guys some of the behind the scenes for that. But this is the biggest company I've ever shot a film for, and I'm getting to direct it, which is really exciting. And so before I was prepping this film, I was going through kind of thinking of the most important tips that I use when I make documentaries. And I want to give you guys these tips. These are going to help you with your films. They're some of the most important tips for getting the best footage with your subject, with the people in your film. And so the number one tip I would say, which I see as the mistake with a lot of young documentary filmmakers or first-time people, is not immersing yourself in the scene. You have to immerse yourself in what's happening in front of you. Shooting the textures and the aerials and some beautiful cinematic stuff of people standing on a hill by themselves, that's important, but you need to be present in what's happening as a filmmaker. You as a documentary filmmaker, you want people to feel like they've lived a moment with your character. Life unfolding is more magical than any script or anything you could contrive. You need to be present in what's happening in front of you. You need to make sure your audience feels like they lived even a sliver of a moment with your characters. So in this latest film we're working on, Clear Sky, which my creative partner Michael Del Monte is directing, and that I'm DPing, I'm doing the cinematography on, we always want to make sure that we're fully experiencing the moments that our main character, Sean Clear Sky, is experiencing. So for this scene here, when he's gone back to meet his parents, he hasn't seen them for a while, the way we approach this is Michael, as the director, actually stepped away from the scene and was in another room and let me be present as the camera operator so that there was no distractions, so that I could fully focus on what was happening and that the characters weren't distracted either by a big crew. But what we did as a step further so that Michael, as the director, could also immerse himself in what was happening, is we got a wireless transmitter system on the camera. So Mike was in the room right beside them listening to what was happening, and he could watch everything on one of our BM5 monitors. And to send this signal wirelessly, we used the Hollyland 300 Mars Pro setup. We're not sponsored by them. They did send this to me, and so we've been using it on our films. I've always used wireless transmitters on set, often using the Tear Deck, but in this case we got to use the Hollyland, and it was actually pretty good. Sometimes the signal did drop out, but we found overall it stayed pretty strong, which I always find transmitters really intermittent, but it was really helpful. And what we actually did as a step further is I put in an earbud, one of the Apple earbuds, into my ear, and then in my other ear I put in the microphone to what was happening so I could hear that we were getting good audio. And Michael in the next room was able to give me directions.
Maybe just bring down the exposure or the ND filter a little,
because he was listening to the audio as well, and him as the director, he has the entire film in his head and he knows which moments he wants to capture, and I can do that as much as I can as a cinematographer and knowing this film film and these characters like I do, but Michael has the plan. He has the script in his mind. So there's times he was telling me, get this shot or go to the hands or don't worry about that B-roll, we can get that later. And it was a really cool way to collaborate. And after filming this conversation for over an hour, I was getting a bit tired. So me and Michael actually swapped out. We traded positions. And this was, again, to keep that number one point going, which was immersion. I was starting to get tired and distracted. My back was bothering me, so I was getting distracted by what was happening. But Michael was able to tap in and take the rest of the interview for the end. And then I jumped back in and started filming. But again, just number one point is immerse yourself in the scene. Just let some stuff unfold every once in a while rather than trying to control it. You as a director, you can be part of the scene and ask people to go certain places. I'm all the time interacting with my characters in my documentary films, but allowing yourself to be present, listening to what's happening, seeing the emotion on your character's face, watching other people interact with that person and getting the details, getting the reactions, this is so important for your film. And number 2 point is, even before that, is prep your character. Give them a heads up of what you're trying to accomplish that day. Unless it's part of your film and your filmmaking process to make your person feel like not sure what's happening next, maybe that's just visually what you want to happen, you should almost always prep your character on what's happening, because the camera, like this camera I'm looking at, it's this judgmental, dark, evil eye that looks at you and makes you feel very uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's amazing how comfortable people can be when you first meet them, but then the second you bring out the camera, everything changes for them. So for me, I like to tell my characters what's happening. In this case, for Clear Sky, we went to the apartment. Michael explained kind of how he was imagining the day would unfold and what we would do. We got on the same page with our character, so no one felt uncomfortable, no one felt thrown under the bus. We were all working together as one team.
One thing I really appreciate about Michael's filmmaking is how much camaraderie he has with his characters. You know, he builds a really tight relationship with them, and he's able to get just incredible films because of it.
These are humans that you're filming in your film. They're real life people. They need a heads up of what's going to be happening, or they at least need to feel like you're on their side. Treat them as a human. Give them a heads up, even if it's just getting on a phone call before you see them. Break that ice so you don't have to do it on camera, and so that they can be themselves. Most people you film aren't actors, so the more they can be themselves, the more natural they'll come across. But when cameras come on, people try to change, they get self-conscious. And this is why too, I don't suggest showing your character footage, unless they're like an athlete, because athletes really love watching themselves often, or like seeing their own technique, so you can show them a bit and it can get them excited. Sometimes this works. When I was doing the Nike commercial with DeMar DeRozan, to be honest, he was kind of in a bad mood, I think, that day. I don't know what had happened. Maybe he was just tired after playing practice for 4 hours. But I showed him some of the footage and his attitude immediately changed. He suddenly seemed a bit more happy to be shooting this footage that we were. I get it for athletes. All day long, they're practicing and people are asking to take their picture, so it gets exhausting after a while. So in that case, showed him some footage and he seemed to cheer up. The third point for your documentary film, and there's so much information that you can go into documentary stuff. We'll be reopening our documentary course in a couple months. It's going to talk about all this, but I'm trying to give you guys lots of information in the interim. The number 3 point is film textures. What I mean by that is film the world around your character. If you've had a moment that we've lived with them, we also want to see what they're looking at. We want to see the world that they're walking through. Not only do you want to get establishing shots of the locations that you're filming, you also want to get shots of what makes that person them. So get shots of their family, the little texture shots around their house, around their neighborhood, stuff they would see. These little detail shots can really help engross you in the film as a viewer. It helps you show the world that this person lives in, and in turn, as you as an audience member, you connect with that person more. So I was reviewing a film recently that one of my students sent me, and a lot of the footage was of the interview of the person sitting down, and then there was some B-roll of that same person doing some activities around their house, but there wasn't anything else. Every shot was of the person. I never got to see the world that this person lived in. So the film became very repetitive. It felt like the entire time in the film I was seeing this type of shot of the person. It was them walking outside in this angle. It was them sitting down for an interview. It was them doing some gardening. It was just all the same shot over and over again. If you can get textures of the world that the person's in, it's gonna help give your edit variety. And variety helps give people a better attention span. It might be why you're considering turning off this YouTube video right now, because there hasn't been much variety. It's also why we add a ton of B-roll to all these videos, showing you clips from the films we've made or some of the other films that inspire us out there. You just want to help the audience feel like they know the world that your character has come from. So shoot the textures, whether it's macro, wide shots, the people around them, or perspective from a car. Shoot the world that they live in, and this will help make a more rounded film. So there you go, guys. Those are 3 of the top documentary tips that I can think of. If there's more questions that you have or more stuff that you want me to cover, let me know. I put a link down below, guys, to some of the new gear that I'm using, like the Nan Light, the Aperture, and this Hollyland. It's all great gear. I'm not sponsored by any of them. Just get the chance to use them, and I really love this gear. It's what I've been using on our actual films. I won't talk about gear on this channel unless I'm actually using it to shoot my film. But awesome. Until the next video, keep safe and wash your hands.